Hey, it's the Ray Rican, and I'm going to talk about the whole thing with. I'm going to talk about systemic racism, but not in the way people are going to think about. I'm talking about it. I'm going to. I was having a conversation. This is how I got into this idea of making this video, because someone was telling me about how they believe in systemic racism and why they believe in systemic racism, and we got to talking about it. And what I told her, the problem is, it's not the systemic racism. Tell them that's the problem that needs to be fixed is we have a systemic failure when it comes to, let's say, I was telling her this is one of the reasons why I'm against public sector unions is because the fact that when it comes to when they're negotiating salaries and stuff like that, the cops, the firefighters, the teachers, who are they negotiating for? They're negotiating for their clients, so to speak. Um, but who's the one that's paying for it? And it's the taxpayer. So you have, for example, let's say there was almost a strike in my school district. The problem with um, what's going on with how much pay they want to give the teachers, and I'm look, I'm not against teachers getting pay, but the problem is their salary is going to be higher than the median salary of the community. So let's say throw up numbers here. Let's say you live in a community where the average salary is $38,000 a year. The teacher's going to be making $45,000 a year. That's $7,000 more than what the average, the median income of that community is. So let's say, for example, it's going to boost up because let's say some of the teachers are going to make more. Some means they're going to end up, paying some of their own salary through their taxes. But that's not where the failure is. That is, I mean, there is a failure there, as you could see. Um, but where I was talking about is where, let's say, for example, you have bad teachers, you have bad cops. Yeah, you have bad public officials. If they're unelected, you can't vote them out. So if you have a bad cop, I always talk about the example of, let's take the example of when I was 8 years old. I was 8 years old. I was the light skinned one of all my friends. All my friends were either dark skinned Latinos or they were half black and half Latino. So they used to bother me about being the light skinned one. And so one day when I was 8, they were saying something, and I'm like, I'm not white, I'm Puerto Rican. And a cop, white cop, heard me saying this, and I guess they got offended that I didn't want to be white. So the cop comes to me and goes, "Oh, how would you like it if I call you an effing spick?" And we reported the cop, and all they did was transfer him to a different precinct. No, there's the problem right there. That's the systemic failure. A cop like, let's say I was 8 years old. He's saying this to an 8-year-old. That guy has no place being a cop. Same thing, let's say if it was a teacher and a teacher heard this and got offended and said the same thing to me. That teacher wouldn't get fired. They'd probably just get transferred to a different school. But there's the systemic failure in how we run things, is that these people don't get fired. You have these once you get these city and these government jobs, it's damn near impossible to get fired because of the public sector unions. They negotiate contracts where it's like it's damn near impossible to fire these teachers. There's a place in New York City where suspended teachers go, they call like the white room or something like that, where they just basically, in order to get a paycheck, they have to go there and stay there the whole day. They don't teach, they don't do nothing because they can't get fired. That's where they go. And that's the failure in our system. These teachers, these cops, they need to be fired. And especially if you have like what happened with me, you have a racist cop. There, he has no place being a cop. He should not be transferred. He should have had procedures put in place for him to get fired. Because at the end of the day, if you people who are talking about systemic racism, but most of you people talking about systemic racism are okay with these public sector unions. And that's the problem. You start these government jobs, and like I said, in the case of this cop, let's say you have this one racist cop. Well, guess what? He's going to teach other cops, and he's going to teach them bad habits, and that's where you get your systemic racism from. Is because the fact that you cannot get rid of these bad cops. So whether they're racist, whether they're abusive towards citizens, there's no way to get rid of them. And that's therein lies the problem. Granted, there's going to be people who frivolously complain about cops, because that's the way things go too. You have to investigate these things. And like I said, I was 8 years old. If there's a cop doing that to an 8-year-old, they should be fired, because it there the one, he wasn't in the conversation. It wasn't about him, but he got offended. So people gonna be, oh, that's cancel culture. It's like I'm doing some sort of cancel culture, because they always say it's about accountability. No, it's about you. Oh, it is about accountability, because these cops and these public sector jobs, once you get these government jobs, there's no getting rid, there's no firing. You gotta, you gotta you gotta do something really egregious to get fired from these jobs. Like, you get a cushy city job, these people are there for 20, 30 years, 40 years, because they know once they get foot in the door, there's nowhere, they're not going anywhere. They get their pension, they get their insurance, they get all that stuff. And so why am I talking about this? Because like I said, someone was talking to this about and I was talking about, and I stated my theory with them, and they had an open mind to listen, and they're like, you know what, that makes sense. And this, I would relate this also to the whole thing, like, Trump brought up the deep state. And here's the problem: it's not nefarious. It's not about these deep staters being nefarious. There's an executive state in Washington, and not just in Washington, in government period. You have these people who go work. Let's say, I remember hearing, I think it was an interview with Marjorie Taylor Greene when she was on the Timcast IRL show, where she was talking about, you have these staffers in DC that it doesn't matter who gets elected, people just hire the same staffers that are there in DC. And that's a problem also. That's why you have that's where you get insiders, where people go in, those people, let's say they're the ones that probably leak to the media and all that stuff, because they hear something, they'll run to the media. And it's like what happened with Trump. You had people that were more interested in life after the Trump administration than they were in doing good government. And same thing with, like I said, you run into the same problem with all the FBI, CIA. These people, it's very hard to fire these people. They have no real accountability with if they do corrupt actions. You look at Spygate, where the media will say, oh, it didn't happen, and then they went from it didn't happen to, oh, they had access to all this nonsense. It's this whole system in place. They protect the people that they like. The media protect the presidents they like, the party that they like. And I say it like that because it goes for both sides. Fox News protected, for example, George W. Bush. The media protected Obama. The media, the mainstream media protects Obama. Right now, and during the election cycle, the media protected Biden. It, I mean, for 1 second. So I'm going to show you when I say that the media covers Here's an example with Biden. I'm going to show you the example. This one when he's campaigning. This is something that the media, instead of, if this Trump did something like this, you're about to see, it would have been 24/7 on the news. But here's what Biden did.
I'll lead an effective strategy to mobilize true international effort to pressure. Mobilize true international effort to pressure.
So for people who, Biden supporters or anti-Trump people, did you see that on the news? Not much. Maybe you saw Fox News making fun of it, but the media covered, because people saw stuff like that. The Hunter Biden story, they covered it up because they wanted the other person to win. They wanted Biden to win. They didn't want Trump to win. And this is the endless cover up. We do have corruption in this country. It's not as bad as in some other countries. I used to have when I lived in Texas, some of my Mexican friends told me, when you drive into Mexico, you need cash, to bring some cash with you, because you'll have like the cops, you got to pay them for them to leave you alone. They're literally, you could be driving the speed limit and they'll just pull you over. They'll see that, let's say you're driving from Texas to Mexico. They'll pull you over just because they see Texas plates. Boom, pay them for them to leave you alone. It's corruption. Do we see that sometimes in this country? I'm pretty sure we do, but it's not to the extent and that it is in other countries. People complain about, like I said, systemic racism and police brutality. That's a first world problem. It really is. It's a first world problem that we're complaining about. And not that I'm saying that it shouldn't be fixed. And because I just said a way that it could be fixed. You gotta, I'm not for public sector unions for this reason, because they create this bureaucratic state that people just have a job for life. As long as you don't steal something, you're good. You're good. You will never get fired. That's the way the bureaucratic state works. And that's the problem. So it's not, to me, it's not about systemic racism. It's a failure in the system. We can't fire bad cops, can't fire bad teachers, can't fire bad FBI agents, CIA agents. All these people, they don't get fired. There's no accountability for bad behavior. And if that's the case, they're going to feel above the law. They're going to feel they could do whatever the hell they want. And that's the problem. You're a public servant. You're supposed to serve the public. That's why it's like when you're negotiating your salaries as a public servant, you're negotiating against the taxpayer. The fact that, let's say, for example, a member of the House makes starting off as a first year makes like $160,000 a year. They get stipends for their office, like let's say $30,000 a year for like office furniture. They get stipends for, that's their salary alone is say the 160. They get a stipend for their office. They get their staff is paid for by the government. So you're talking about we have 512 members in the House. That's already a 500. Let's say each one cost about $1 million in salary and staff and all that stuff. They cost somewhere between $500,000 to $1 million. That's ridiculous. And all because, let's say, for example, bills shouldn't be 1,000 pages of legalese. It should not be, it shouldn't take you a month to read a bill. And let alone, it shouldn't be something where you release a bill on Monday and it gets voted. You release a 10,000 bill page on Monday for people to vote on it on Tuesday. No, that's bullshit. But that's what goes on, and this is the stuff that's going on that's causing distrust distrust in the government. And we have to weed this stuff out. That's how, like, Dan Bongino was talking about. There needs to be a house cleaning of the FBI, especially at the top. And but that's, like I said, there is no fear of oh, if I abuse my job or anything like that, I'm going to get fired. It rarely happens. And that's where we need to fix this. This is where it needs to be fixed. I think it's something that could unite both left and right. The only problem is people on the left are like, oh, union's always good. No, union's not always good. Excessively powered unions are no good, and the same thing as excessively weak unions are no good. So we need to have some sort of compromise when it comes to this, if we want to be able to create unity in left and right when it comes to this issue. You want to clean up the quote unquote systemic racism. Guarantee you clean up these systemic failures in the system, and your whole idea of cleaning up the systemic racism, which I don't agree with. But if you clean up these failures, I guarantee you it will also clean up what you think is systemic racism, because it's just a failure in the system to get rid of bad cops, bad teachers, bad actors in government. Because if we can't vote them out, even then you have you have corrupt politicians like Nancy Pelosi, I was going to say Nancy Pelosi. You got people who've been in, being a public servant. It shouldn't be a career. It shouldn't be something you spend 40 years being a politician, like a Nancy Pelosi, like a Mitch McConnell, a Lindsey Graham, who's that Barbara Boxer, or what's that? No, I forget what the other one's name from California. But anyway, Chuck Schumer has been in office forever. These people, you're a public servant. You should your time should be limited in there. And this whole idea of another thing we're talking about. Okay, what is it? I think as long as you serve one term in the House, you get a pension from the federal government. Not like a cheapy choppy pension. You get a real pension. Like, that's ridiculous. You're a public servant. You're serving the people. That you're supposed to be serving the public good. Serving the public, getting a pension for one term, for a 2-year term in office, is not a public good. It's not a public service. But this is, the corruption of the pure bureaucratic state. Well, how do we fix it? Like I said, I get rid of unions. People, we have to need to do our civic duty better. You need less police officers, and maybe more like sheriff police, where your local county sheriff it's an elected office. So if you don't like your local sheriff and the way they're policing, you could vote out the county sheriff. So, but let me know what you guys think. I'm curious on what people have their own ideas for solutions when it comes to this. What's their own ideas? So leave me a comment. Let's interact with this conversation. Like I was talking with my friend. Let me know, like I said, in the comment section, and you could PM me or comment on either on the video or comment when I post this. Let me know what you guys think. I'm really curious when it comes to this. So anyways, I'm the Right Weekend. If you're watching me on YouTube, I'm also put this on Rumble. Please cross-subscribe, vice versa. If you're on Rumble, please also subscribe on YouTube if you're still using it. I haven't given up. I want to be able to get to people on both platforms. And you can interact with me social media. I'm still on the waiting list for True Social. But I'm on everything else: Facebook, Twitter, Gab, Telegram, Clout Hub, Parler, Getter, you name it, I got it. All right. That being said, have a good one.